Yeah.
Hey guys, welcome to this review today. Of course, today I'm going to be talking about Late Night with the Devil, directed by Cameron and Colin Carn, starring David Dastmalchian as TV show host Jack Delroy on Halloween night in 1977. As he's trying to chase the ratings up to Carson's level, he decides to bring on the devil onto late night TV, and the rest is history, supposedly. Because this film is a sort of like found footage documentary-esque horror film in the vein of, well, not quite in the vein of the Blair Witch Project, but of course the similar idea of, someone stumbling upon this footage that was, enclosed in a certain period of time. And yet again, I heard a lot of good things about this movie going into it. Of course, seeing David Dastmalchian finally get a leading role that, he's been working his whole career towards. I know there might have been one movie or so that he was a lead, but this is the first movie I've seen him in a lead role. And I think this is the most prominent film that he has had the lead in throughout his career so far, in regards to how much attention he is getting for his performance in this. And first off, I am just so happy for the guy that he finally got such a meaty and juicy role to sink his teeth into, because really he is the best part about this entire thing from an acting standpoint. The way he plays the kind of fake TV persona that you see from a lot of these talk show host, the way he acts like he's one of the people. Yet again, it's such a great portrayal, and yet again, the more layers that are unraveled about him throughout the rest of the narrative is what really makes his performance stand out. There's a lot of subtlety, there's a lot of detail in the way he plays Jack Delroy at certain moments in the film, whether he's on camera or whether he's off. And I think Dastmalchian really delivers on such a high level, and yet again, really happy for the guy, especially after everything he's gone through. To get a break like this is truly something spectacular. And of course, this is a small, low-budget, independent film. And in some ways, I think that adds to the movie's benefit, because they were obviously working with little, but they utilized so much of it and created something greater than what could have been the sum of its parts, right? And the thing that this movie absolutely nails is the 70s aesthetic that I think is just amazingly felt through every single element of the production design and the costumes. It really does feel like you're being transported back to Halloween night 1977 in such a realized way. I really think that element works. It feels like you're just watching this talk show at home on the TV set, because most of this movie is the TV episode unraveling in front of you. And there's some other elements that include like this documentary crew who are shooting the behind the scenes stuff. Yet again, don't really know how well that works, but we'll get into that later. But I really do think this film nails the aesthetic. And also, I just think it's so well directed by the Carnes brothers, because, throughout the movie there will be like a little glitch in the screen, or, in the way that these things are placed, it is so well threaded to the point that, something's a little off in almost every single frame, and it keeps building and building and building until you reach the eventual climax that you're almost expecting to happen. And yet again, the performers here, the set design, the sound design, I think is quite impeccable. I think some of my favorite sound design of the entire year thus far. And it all is utilized by, building on top of each other to create, yet again, a very holistic sort of horror film that really feels like every single detail almost was poured with the utmost attention and care. This is an insanely well-directed movie. And also the way they'll utilize close-ups on people's faces. Like, for instance, there's this girl played by Ingrid Torelli, who is the possessed girl who comes onto the talk show and how they try to commune with the devil. And I just think she is absolutely awesome in this, because the way she speaks is very off-kilter. The way she'll just stare into the camera, it's very, very off-putting, and yet again, something's wrong as soon as she appears on the screen. It's just things like that, where something's ever so slightly off, but the movie makes sure that it focuses on it and it notices it. It doesn't do anything flashy with the camera. It just lets you take in this reaction that's happening right in front of you and seeing it live. And I think that is what really makes this film so effective. And I think there's a really great usage of practical effects in this film that are kind of Cronenberg-esque at points, which is a big compliment, I must say. And I think that they worked very effectively well. And yet again, the way they're placing the story is what really makes them feel very earned and very meticulous. And so, yet again, it's a great blending of all these different things that you would expect from a great horror movie. Late Night with the Devil certainly has it, and I think the cast is pretty great overall as well. And I think the cast of characters in here is very memorable as well. You got the doctor who's taking care of this possessed girl, played by Laura Gordon. You have the supposed psychic, who can apparently like feel the presence of other souls. You got the skeptic in here who was a magician, but now he's like trying to disprove everyone around him, and he's got a real, asshole type attitude to him. And of course you got the sidekick to Jack Delroy here. Yet again, these characters all serve a purpose within the narrative, and I think for the most part they're all performed and written very well. I will say Ian Bliss as the skeptic, I thought his delivery was a little questionable throughout the entire thing. His presence is fun, and I appreciate what his character is doing, but I think the performance itself could have been a little bit tighter, per se. But this movie really is just so finely tuned that by the end I was just like shocked and absolutely riveted by it. But I will say, the more I thought about it, because a lot of the people I was with were not as huge on it, and I kind of felt like bullied and giving it a lower rating, but the more and more I put it together, there are little things that come up here and there that kind of bother me. And of course, we can't talk about this movie without talking about the controversy surrounding it, because of course there were some AI generated images that were used for the interstitials in this film, and a lot of people were in an uproar because like, oh, how dare you stifle creativity and try to use AI in any capacity. And on principle, I really do understand and agree with that notion. But what they did here, they were just like, all right, let's see, this was when AI was really kind of, not huge yet, but still kind of taking off. They just typed it in. It's like, oh, we get an image here. All right, let's use it and then like spruce it up a bit with our visual artist for this movie and see what they can do with it. And yeah, I think if you're watching it, you can hardly tell it's AI. And so, because I think that they worked very, very well within the film, that if you didn't know, then you wouldn't even be bringing it up. And so I think at that point, it is, something that does need to be discussed, because I don't think AI should be anywhere near the creative process unless you're like de-aging people digitally, and maybe that there's a better way of doing that during filming, because of course there's always hiccups in that as well. But on principle, I don't think that AI should be anywhere near anything that is human generated. And yeah, so I really don't agree with that, just personally speaking, as I can probably speak for most creative people and people who follow movies. But I kind of understand where they were coming from here, and I don't think it would be fair to completely condemn this movie because of that one element of it. And I'm pretty sure that this is something that won't happen again. And especially after everything that happened with the writer's strike, the SAG-AFTRA strike especially, this is something that we don't need in the industry. But yet again, it's not a complete steamroll over this movie or anything like that, because it's so effective just on its own merit. But I do think some of the visual effects are a bit weak and very, very cheap, as you could probably see. Like there's these little electric shocks that might pop up once in a while, and it looks like it was done like in Photoshop or something, or like After Effects. So I know most things are done in After Effects, but just in the sense that it does feel a bit cheapened by how great the rest of this movie is, and how much effort was poured into every single aspect. But I understand budgetary restrictions might be a factor in that, but still, it's something that definitely you notice while watching the film. And there's essentially this documentary explaining Jack's backstory at the beginning of this film, which is done by Michael Ironside, of all people. And I think that seemed a bit too exposition heavy, in the sense that, yes, it does set this whole story up, but it's just spoon-fed to the audience. You don't get to see it actually play out. And I think it's an interesting idea in the sense that this is documentary explaining Jack's backstory. But at the same time, I don't really like how this movie is framed as a found footage documentary, considering a lot of things that happen in this narrative that are quite internalized. It doesn't really make sense how it all comes together by the end. And look, I think the ending is riveting. I think it works on its own merit as, you know, just being engrossed and engaged, perhaps, if you're not thinking about the framing device of this film. But once you really think about it, I do think it kind of falls apart a little bit. And that's quite unfortunate, because, yet again, this is one of the most entertaining and nail-biting movies of this entire year. And for it to be brought down by that is a little sad, because I walked out of this movie thinking I loved it. And then I'm like, I'm not so sure. I still might end up loving it if I watch it again, because it is so well directed and it is so entertaining. But I'm really not sure 100% if that is going to be the case. And of course, I do have to mention as well, I don't know why I decided to do this. I just thought it would be funny. If you guys have ever seen, not that I'm a huge fan of Family Guy, but if you've ever seen the episode where Peter's in the theater, like the cutaway where he's like watching all the film companies pop up and he's like commenting on it, I decided to kind of like do my Peter Griffin voice and kind of make a joke about it. And then it actually ended up being the beginning of the movie. Like, I was just making a joke, and of course, of all the movies I choose to do, that happened to be the one where it was completely accurate. And usually, I would not fault a movie for having so many production companies at the beginning of the film as a negative against it, but it's really way too much. Like, the fact that Family Guy made that joke should say a lot, right? And the fact that it's actually a part of this film is kind of insane to me. Like, yet again, it's an independent production. You know, you gotta appreciate all the funds you can get, especially considering some of the things I've said, but it is way too much. It is really overkill. Yet again, it's before the movie takes place, but it was a small criticism that I had to throw at this film. And also, I just wish we knew a bit more about Jack Delroy's backstory, though I don't think it entirely matters. I think it would have helped flesh out the experience with these characters a little bit more. But besides that, I think this really is such a standout horror film. Certainly one of the standouts from this year, and I think that will continue to be the case for the rest of the year. This could end up being an honorable mention on my list of the best films of the year once we roll around to that point. But I have to see it again around October and spooky season before I can really say whether I love this movie or not. But as it stands, I'm going to give it an 8.25 out of 10. You know, still, I think this is a great film in many, many ways. I just don't know if I can say I love it because of how the ending plays out, as opposed to everything that was set up before then. But yet again, I still think what is there is pretty great. I think the character writing is quite impeccable. And I think that David Dastmalchian, just really happy for the fact that he finally got a really, really great role to showcase how truly, truly talented he is. And I can't wait to see him carry more movies in the future. This guy deserves more leading roles, as great of a character actor as he is. Yeah, can't wait to see what he does next, and I can't wait to see what these brothers do next, because I'm definitely going to be keeping an eye out for whatever they put out from now on. If they're this interesting in the realm of horror, I definitely want to keep coming back for more. So yeah, guys, that's my review of Late Night with the Devil. What did you think about the movie? Let me know down in the comments below, and of course, smash the like button. Subscribe to the channel if you want to hear more thoughts on other films from myself. And also music as well, because of course we're going through the countdown for the top 50 albums of the 50s between me and Johnny Radio. Last week the episode was on his channel, but this week is going to be on mine, so please stay tuned for that very, very thing. And of course, I have to mention, there is going to be a review, another On Wax review series review of the latest album from Beyonce herself, Cowboy Carter. Really going to have an interesting conversation with that one, and I hope that you tune in, all you music and Beyonce fans, when that album review does drop sometime soon. But yeah, guys, until then, you have yourselves a good one, and I'll talk to you in the next video.